Bruce Lee was dared by a champion and said go ahead, 3 seconds later took his title. Bruce Lee was dared by a champion and said go ahead, 3 seconds later took his title. The gym was packed, the air thick with the smell of sweat and anticipation. World kickboxing champion Viktor "The Wall" Kovalenko, a 6'9" giant with muscles that seemed carved from granite, looked at Bruce Lee with a sneer. The two were in the center of an improvised ring, surrounded by journalists, fighters and fans who had paid a fortune to see the duel of the century. You're fast, Chinese. But speed doesn't break bones. Kovalenko flexed his arms, making his veins stand out like ropes. I'll give you a chance. Give up now, and I'll let you walk out of here with your teeth straight. Bruce didn't respond. He just adjusted his gloves, his dark eyes fixed on his opponent, like a predator evaluating its prey. The silence stretched on, tense, until Kovalenko lost his patience. Are you scared, right? So go, show what you can do. I challenge you. Bruce tilted his head slightly, an almost imperceptible smile on his lips. Go ahead. The gong sounded. Kovalenko charged like a bull, fists raised, ready to crush his opponent with a single blow. Bruce didn't move. Waited. Calculated. When the champion's punch was inches from his face, he disappeared. It wasn't a sideways step. It wasn't a block. It was as if time itself had warped. In the blink of an eye, Bruce was behind Kovalenko, and his right foot shattered the champion's kneecap with a precise side kick. The sound was dry, like a twig snapping. Kovalenko roared, falling to his knees, his fingers clutching his destroyed leg. The gym erupted in screams. Some applauded, others cursed in disbelief. Bruce didn't celebrate. He just returned to his starting position, as if nothing had happened. Kovalenko tried to get up, his face contorted in agony, but his right leg wouldn't respond. He staggered, bracing himself against the ropes, and then Bruce moved forward again. This time, it wasn't a kick. It was a sequence, 3 punches so fast they sounded like a single bang. The first broke the champion's nose. The second sunk into his sternum. The third hit him in the jaw with a crack that echoed through the gym. Kovalenko collapsed like a bag of sand. The referee started counting, but everyone knew it was useless. The champion didn't move. Bruce approached, kneeling next to the limp body. There was no triumph in his eyes, only a cold calm. You said speed doesn't break bones, he muttered, almost to himself. But you forgot that precision does. Then he got up and walked towards the exit, leaving behind Kovalenko's title, the blood in the ring and the shocked crowd. Reporters ran after him, but Bruce had already disappeared into the Hong Kong night, like a ghost who never needed to prove anything to anyone. End. The weight of silence. Bruce emerged from the gym through the back door, where the Hong Kong humidity clung to his skin like a second layer. The air smelled of burning oil and fried fish, mixed with the sour sweat of the alleys. He didn't look back. He knew that if he did, he would see the reflection of the lit ring, the camera flashes, Kovalenko's body being carried like a broken trophy. But there was no glory in it. Just the end of something that should never have started. His apartment was a 20-minute walk away, a cubicle on the 10th floor of a rundown building, where the elevator only worked when it wanted. He took the stairs 2 at a time, his muscles still shaking from the effort, his adrenaline dissipating in waves of exhaustion. When he opened the door, the smell of mold and incense greeted him. Turned on the light. The only window looked into a ventilation shaft, where the sound of neighbors' washing machines echoed like a mechanical heartbeat. He took off his gloves and threw them on the splintered wooden table. They fell next to a manila envelope, with no return address, just his name handwritten in crooked letters. He tore it apart with his teeth. Inside, a single sheet of paper and a rusty key. You've broken more than bones today. They won't let you go. Go to Macau. The boat leaves at 3 a.m. from Pier 12. The key is to cabin 7. Don't wait for me. There was no signature. Bruce crumpled the paper in his hand, feeling the weight of the words like lead in his stomach. They. There was no need to ask who. The same ones who had financed the fight, the same ones who had bet big on Kovalenko, the same ones who didn't like losing, especially to a ghost. He looked at the clock. 11:47 p.m. It was just over 3 hours. Pier 12 was a forgotten place, where fishing boats rotted alongside smugglers' vessels. Low mist covered the water like a dirty sheet, and the only sound was the creaking of chains and the murmur of muffled voices near the containers. Bruce kept his hood up, eyes scanning the shadows. It wasn't paranoia. He knew they had been following him since he left the gym. Cabin 7 was on the lower deck, locked with an old padlock. The key turned with a rusty click. Inside, a black backpack and a note, clean clothes. Money. A passport. Don't use your real name. Macau is just the beginning. Bruce quickly changed his clothes, stuffing his bloody jacket into his backpack before throwing it into the sea. The passport had a photo of him, but the name was different, Li Wei. He smiled without humor. They always knew more about him than he did. The boat set sail at 3 a.m. sharp, cutting through the black water like a blade. Bruce stood at the stern, watching Hong Kong disappear into darkness. I felt no relief. Just the certainty that the fight wasn't over, just changed rings. Macau welcomed him with neon lights and the smell of dirty money. The Golden Dragon Casino shone like a beacon of decadence, its halls filled with men in suits and women in jewelry worth more than a fighter's life. Bruce entered through the back door, where a man wearing sunglasses was waiting for him with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You've caused quite a mess, said the man, holding out an envelope. But bosses like men who aren't afraid to break rules. They have a purpose. Bruce didn't touch the envelope. I don't work for anyone. The man laughed, a dry sound like burning paper. Everyone works for someone, Mr. Lee. The question is whether you'd rather be the hammer or the nail. Bruce looked at his hands. They were still clean, but he knew they wouldn't stay that way for long. Where and when? The man actually smiled then. Tomorrow. At midnight. A warehouse in the industrial district. Bring your fists. And leave your conscience at home. The warehouse smelled of gasoline and rust. Industrial lights hung from the ceiling, illuminating a makeshift ring in the center, surrounded by armed men. In the opposite corner, a huge fighter, with tattooed skin and scars that told stories of pain, flexed his fingers as if he were warming up for a dance. Bruce took off his shirt. There was no audience, no referee, no rules. Just him, the other man, and the hungry looks of those watching. The first punch came without warning. Bruce missed it by inches, feeling the wind pass close to his face. The second hit his side, knocking the air out of him. He staggered, but didn't fall. When he counterattacked, it was with the precision of someone who knew there would be no second chance. The giant fell to his knees, blood dripping from his split lip. Bruce didn't stop. Blow after blow, as if each punch was an answer, to Kovalenko, to the men who had bought him, to the life he never asked for. When the man finally collapsed, unconscious, Bruce pulled away, panting. The spectators applauded, as if it were a spectacle. One of them threw a wad of bills at his feet. Good job. There's more where that came from. Bruce looked at the money, then at the fallen man. There was no victory. Just the feeling that no matter how many he knocked out, there would always be another waiting. He took the money and left without saying a word. The warehouse was left behind, but darkness followed. Years later, no one remembered the name Bruce Lee. In Hong Kong, he was just one ghost among many. In Macau, a rumor. In Bangkok, a legend told in dirty bars, where drunken wrestlers swore they saw a man who never lost, but who also never smiled. He lived on a boat anchored in international waters, far from ports and authorities. Sometimes, when the sea was calm, he would sit on the bow and look at the horizon, as if hoping to see something beyond the void. I no longer fought for money. I didn't fight for titles. He fought because it was the only thing he knew how to do, and because, deep down, he knew that one day someone would show up to collect all the debts he had accumulated. Until then, it would keep moving. Because stopping meant being found. And Bruce Lee would never be found. The last fight. The boat rocked gently under the gray sky, as if the sea itself was holding its breath. Bruce Lee didn't need watches to know the time was near. For years he had felt the weight of something approaching, not an enemy, not a challenger, but something greater, something he himself had created without realizing it. It was on a new moon night, when even the stars seemed to be hiding, that the boat was boarded. There was no warning. No screams, no engine sounds. Just the light scrape of a hull against yours, followed by silent footsteps on the deck. When Bruce turned around, there were already 3 men standing before him, dressed in black, their faces covered by silk masks. They carried no weapons. They didn't need to. "You know why we're here," said the tallest one, in perfect Cantonese. Bruce didn't respond. He just took a deep breath, feeling the cold air fill his lungs. There was no fear. There was never fear. Just the certainty that, this time, there would be no escape. "The master wants what is his," continued the man. "And what's his is you." Bruce smiled. A quick, almost imperceptible smile, like a blade cutting through the dark. Then he should have come in person. The first blow came without warning. A direct, precise punch, loaded with years of training, but Bruce was no longer there. His body moved before his mind even registered the movement, moving with a lightness that belied his almost 60 years. The second man attacked with a spinning kick, but Bruce intercepted him with a circular block, using his opponent's strength against himself. The third tried an armbar, but found only emptiness. They fought on the narrow deck, among ropes and crates of supplies, under the pale light of the moon. It wasn't a pretty fight. There were no choreographies, no war cries. It was efficient, brutal, like a dance only the dead knew. Bruce didn't use techniques that could be recognized. There was no jeet kune do there, just pure instinct, years of pain and discipline transformed into movement. One of the men managed to land a blow on Bruce's side, causing him to retreat. Blood ran down his shirt, but he didn't stop. Instead, he lunged forward, grabbing his opponent's wrist and twisting it hard enough to break bones. The man screamed, but the sound was drowned out by the sharp crack of a neck being broken. The other 2 stepped back for a second, surprised. They didn't expect him to still be so fast. They didn't expect him to still be so lethal. "It doesn't have to end like this," said the leader, but his voice was shaking. Bruce wiped the blood from his lip with the back of his hand. "It's already finished." The second man attacked again, this time with a knife. Bruce dodged, but the blade tore through his thigh. He grunted but didn't miss a beat. With one fluid movement, he grabbed his opponent's arm and twisted it until the knife fell to the deck. Then, with a precise kick, he threw the man against the mast. The impact was strong enough to render the attacker unconscious. The leader was left alone. For a moment, the 2 stared at each other. The man was breathing heavily, his eyes visible above the mask showing something Bruce hadn't seen in decades: fear. "Who is the master?" Bruce asked, his voice calm, almost curious. The man hesitated. Then, with a quick movement, he pulled a pistol from the waistband of his pants. Bruce was already moving before his finger pressed the trigger. The shot echoed over the waters, but the bullet went far, lost in the darkness. He closed the distance in a second, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting it until the weapon fell into the sea. Then, with a sharp blow to the throat, he left his opponent on his knees, choking. "Speak," ordered Bruce, holding the man by the hair. "Who sent you?" The man coughed, blood running from the corner of his mouth. "The dragon," he whispered. "The real one." Bruce let go of him as if he had been burned. The man fell to the deck, panting but still alive. He's dead, Bruce said, but there was doubt in his voice. No, the man laughed, a wet, broken sound. He never dies. He just waits. Bruce looked at the horizon. There, where the sea met the sky, something shone, a ship, perhaps, or just a reflection of the moon. But he knew it was no coincidence. The dragon always came back. The boat was set on fire that same night. Bruce didn't try to save him. Instead, he grabbed just a backpack with a few belongings, an old photo, a notebook, a knife that had belonged to his father, and dove into the dark waters. He swam to the shore, where an old fisherman found him at dawn, huddled in the sand, shivering from the cold. "You're alive," said the fisherman, surprised. Bruce didn't respond. He just looked out to sea, where the boat was burning, a funeral pyre without a body. "Where are you going now?" asked the old man. Bruce stood up, his muscles sore, his body marked by new cuts and bruises. "To the only place I can still hide." And so, without looking back, he walked towards the mountains. Epilogue: The Dragon That Never Dies. Years later, in a forgotten monastery in the mountains of Sichuan, an old monk taught martial arts to a group of children. His body was thin, almost fragile, but his movements still carried the precision of a blade. "The real fight is not against each other," he said, while demonstrating a sequence of blows. "It's against what you carry inside you." The children listened, fascinated. Nobody knew his real name. To them, he was just Sifu, the master. But sometimes, when the wind blew from the east, he would look at the horizon and think of the sea. And smile. Because deep down, he knew the dragon was still out there. And that, one day, he would come to collect his debt. The dragon's last breath. The years had passed like slow rivers, carrying with them the weight of forgotten battles. The monastery, nestled between peaks that touched the clouds, was a refuge of silence and discipline. Sifu taught not just blows, but the balance between strength and renunciation, lessons he himself had learned the hard way. The children, with bright eyes and scraped knees, had no idea that the old man in front of them was once a man of blood and fire. But the east wind brought more than memories. One night, as the full moon bathed the mountains in silver, a tremor shook the monastery walls. It wasn't an earthquake. It was something deeper, as if the earth itself recognized an ancient predator. Sifu woke up before the others, his bones aching with the dampness of age, but his senses still sharp. He walked down to the courtyard, where shadows danced in the pale light. And then he saw it. A figure emerged from the mist, tall as a tower, golden eyes glowing like embers. The scales, once black as night, were now opaque, marked by scars that told stories of centuries. The dragon tilted his head, and his voice resounded like distant thunder. "You took a long time to pay, little man." Sifu didn't move. There was no fear in his chest, just an old sadness, as if he had been waiting for this moment since the day he left the sea behind. "I knew you would come," he said, his voice calm. "But I didn't think it would be so soon." The dragon laughed, a sound that made the monastery's tiles shake. "Early?" He extended a claw, pointing to the east. "The world below is on fire. Kingdoms fall, empires rise and crumble like sandcastles. And you, here, playing master with little children." Sifu looked at his wrinkled hands. They had already held swords, strangled men, taken lives. Now, they only taught how to hold the bamboo stick firmly. "I'm not kidding," he replied. "I chose." The dragon advanced, its paws crushing rocks like they were eggshells. The children, awakened by the noise, peered through the cracks in the doors, their faces pale with terror. Sifu raised a hand, asking them to be quiet. "He chose?" The dragon breathed fire, blue flames that licked the air without burning anything. "You owe me a life." "Yours." "I know." "Then fight." Sifu took a deep breath. There were no more weapons within his reach, no allies, no strategies. Just him, the dragon and the weight of a promise made decades ago, when he still believed that violence could be redeemed by violence. He closed his eyes. And when he opened them, he was no longer an old man. His body moved before his mind could keep up, leaping to the side with an agility that belied his years. The dragon attacked, claws tearing through the air where he had been seconds before. Sifu rolled over, picked up a rock from the ground, and threw it with surgical precision, directly at the beast's right eye. The dragon roared, more in surprise than in pain, and Sifu took the opportunity to climb its back, clinging to its scales like a stubborn insect. "Is that all you have?" The dragon sneered, shaking himself to try to knock him down. Sifu didn't respond. Instead, it went up to the creature's neck, where the scales were thinner, almost fragile. With his bare hands, he began to press specific points, as if he were deactivating a trap. The dragon struggled, but something in its movements slowed down, as if its body no longer responded as before. "What are you doing?" The beast's voice now sounded less confident. "Teaching," said Sifu, his fingers finding the last point. "You taught me that brute force is not enough. I'm returning the favor." With one last push, something inside the dragon snapped. It wasn't a killing blow, but a sudden exhaustion, as if all the battles he had fought over the centuries had finally caught up with him at once. The creature staggered, knees buckling, and fell onto its side, breathing heavily. Sifu went downstairs, wiping his hands on his tunic. The dragon watched him with a mixture of anger and something that could have been respect. "You beat me." "No," Sifu corrected. "I just showed that you were already tired." The dragon closed its eyes. When he opened them again, the golden light had gone out, replaced by a dull, almost human glow. "So this is how it ends?" Sifu sat next to him, as if they were two old friends sharing a quiet moment. "I don't know. But I know you won't die today." "Why?" "Because dragons don't die. They just wait." The dragon let out a long sigh, and its body began to shrink, scales turning into skin, claws into hands. When the transformation ended, an elderly man, with white hair and still golden eyes, was lying on the floor. He coughed, putting a hand to his chest. "It hurts." "I imagine," Sifu said, helping him to sit down. "But it hurts less than carrying the weight of all the lives you took." The former dragon looked at his hands, as if he didn't recognize them. "What do I do now?" Sifu smiled. "Same as me. To teach." And so, under the light of the moon that was beginning to hide behind the mountains, two old men stood up. One, the master who abandoned the sword. The other, the monster who had learned to be human. The children, hidden, watched as they entered the monastery together, as if they had always been part of the same story. And the east wind finally stopped blowing.